Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for meeting today. It is indeed a pleasure to discuss competition policy with you as representatives of our regional and local communities in Europe. And I especially want to thank Mr. Murphy for his work on the opinion on our activities, because this is an excellent piece of work. One of the things we share, and this is the reason why I'm so happy to be here, is that competition matters. It matters for citizens locally, regionally. It matters in our daily lives. And the point is, of course, that competition, when it works, empowers the citizen in the role as consumers. It gives citizens a wider choice, prices that they can afford. It encourages our businesses to innovate, to invest, and of course to service their customers, because then businesses know that the customers can go to somewhere else and do their shopping. And it is important because when companies, big as well as small, play by competition rules, well, it helps to ensure that our economy grows, that jobs are created, and that the economy and the market works for everyone. And this is why competition rules has been in the treaty since the very first day. And that is now 60 years ago, and in these 60 years, of course, our economies has developed, but competition law enforcement is equally strong. In his report, Mr. Murphy has highlighted a number of our most recent actions. I think it's a very good read. So if you want more in detail, go engage. With our inquiry into e-commerce, well, we work to ensure that citizens can shop online without borders, without obstacles. With our case against the drug company Aspen, we're acting against price increases of several hundreds% of 5 life-saving cancer drugs. And by ordering member states to recover selective tax advantages of multinationals, well, we confirm that the single markets should work for everyone, and not just for the lucky few in a competition for state subsidies, because this is not what competition is about. In this situation, when it comes to the prices of life-saving drugs, when it comes to actually being able to have the choice with e-shopping, when it comes to knowing that the business I work in, they pay their taxes, and we compete with other businesses and they pay their taxes too, well, this is a signal and examples of the market working for each and everyone and giving a fair chance of making it. At the same time, of course, the Commission must be confident to take a step back if that's appropriate. And when it comes to the area of state aid control, this is exactly what has happened. Because we agree with this committee that when public spending doesn't affect competition at European scale, there is no need for us to be involved. We took a number of steps to turn that into reality, because agreement is one thing, acting upon it is another thing. And that we have done. Of course, most of you have first-hand decisions about taking decisions to invest in infrastructure, that be roads, digital infrastructure. Actually, in 2015, member states spent over 84 billion euros on investments like this. And of course, governments need to know when an investment involves state aid and when it doesn't. So last year in May, we published what we call the Notice on the Notion of Aid. And this notice makes it clear when public investment is state aid and when it's not investment, and when it's not state aid. This is the way of making it clear that when investments in roads, railroads, inland waterways, well, it's not state aid when they don't compete with other infrastructure of the same kind. Of course, you have a very special situation if you want to build a bridge next to a bridge or road next to a road. But I think we all agree that that would be kind of strange investment decisions to take. If you build a road, if you establish inland waterways, if you build a bridge, what it says in the notice on the notion of aid, it's not state aid. We're talking about many projects also in the local communities, which are exactly local projects. And our notice also makes clear that these are not state aid because it doesn't affect competition across borders. And we're talking about things that can be vital in the local community. That could be investments in general hospitals. It could be investments in homes that cares for elderly citizens. It could be the upgrading of small ports whose users are mostly local fishermen. So, of course, there is no need for us to look at local matters because it doesn't affect cross-border competition. We've also made things simpler for state aid spending when it comes to state aid that hasn't much of effect on competition, especially when you engage, if you do, by expanding what we call the general block exemption regulation, to make that bigger, to cover more areas, so that member states, authorities can act without spending time with the Commission. 4 years ago, more than 30% of new state aid measures needed the Commission okay before they could go ahead. Now that figure is less than 5%. Less than 5% of state aid measures now need the Commission okay before they can go ahead. And this means that thousands of grants worth some 26 billion euros per year can go to support things like broadband connection, training, research, small and medium-sized businesses, green energy, without needing the Commission approval beforehand. In May, we took a step further because we included ports and airports in the general block exemption regulation. Your committee gave feedback on the changes that we took, and we took this on board. Of course, we listen when we get this kind of qualified input. The first beneficiaries of the new rules, they are regional airports that serve up to 3 million passengers per year. And this covers 70% of all European airports and 15% of air traffic. So now member states can maintain or upgrade these airports without getting the Commission approval in advance. In the general block exemption regulation, we state the criteria. It's a recipe, it's a cookbook. Following the recipe, everything is fine. For airports with less than 200,000 passengers a year, and that covers actually around half of European airports, we've gone even further. These airports are the airports that keeps our regions and our cities connected. So this is very important infrastructure. The thing is that it covers less than 1% of European air traffic. So it is obvious they don't have much effect on competition as such, no matter that they are very important for regional connectivity. So the regions and their citizens are now free to decide if they want to spend public money on these airports, including operating aid. Because sometimes for connectivity reasons, it can be important to spend money also on operating aid. For ports, now member states can invest up to 150 million euros in seaports and up to 50 million in inland ports. We've also simplified rules for culture and sports arenas. Support in these areas are often not state aid anyway. Only a few very large projects are, and now even fewer projects need the Commission approval before they can go ahead. So we're working to simplify wherever we can, and we are working to empower wherever we can. Because public spending, well, when it doesn't affect competition, cross-border competition, it should be something to be discussed between responsible elected representatives and the voters, and not lengthy discussions with the Commission. We do hope that even when state aid is then not exempted from Commission control, that you feel that that doesn't necessarily make it a problem. Because for a lot of state aids, we have a lot of public spending. We issue guidelines that enables governments to avoid state aid issues. These guidelines, they reflect, of course, core principles of state aid control. They reflect our experience, and if we on that experience can give guidelines that makes lives easier, of course we do our best to do that. These principles, they are worth defending, because the point is, of course, that we must ensure that citizens and entrepreneurs who have bright ideas are not kept out of the market by the companies who do receive state aid. So aid should only be given when the market cannot deliver the project. And public spending should, of course, also be limited to what is necessary to get the project off ground. There is no reason to spend more than necessary of taxpayers' money, because this guarantees that taxpayers get good value for their money, and it guarantees that EU member states do not start a subsidy race where only the richer countries can even participate. Of course, state aid must create jobs, not destroy jobs. And that is why we prohibit support to incentivize the relocation of jobs from one region of our union to another region of the union. So our rules leaves government and local authorities a lot of freedom to invest in our communities. Of course, it is then important to ensure the trust and the transparency when it happens. And I am very, very pleased to hear that your committee also calls for more openness in public spending. Because with the empowerment, with the things that can happen, of course it is important for citizens to be able to know how money is spent, why they are spent, and who gets the benefit of the spending. Since July 2016, governments must publish some basic details online if they award state aid of more than €500,000. They share the name of the beneficiary, the amount of aid, as well as the goal of awarding the aid and the legal basis for that support. And since these new rules came into effect, 25 member states have posted just about 13,000 aid awards online. So the transparency is improving for citizens and, of course, journalists to look into how do governments spend taxpayers' money. This openness empowers citizens. When they know about the support that their government give, well, they can discuss it with you, with other political representatives in their communities. They can ask questions, and they can make you do the follow-up work if you find that it's needed. And of course, when government has more freedom to invest and citizens have an idea where their money is going, well, then here we can focus on the bigger cases where it does affect competition, where it does affect cross-border issues, and I think that is a very, very good division of labor. In the work of Mr. Murphy and your committee, you list areas where we need to take our work forward. And this is what I will end with. We will remain vigilant against selective tax advantages of multinationals. We will continue to check that support for renewables helps market to make the energy transition. And we will continue to do our best to make sure that our regional communities get the fast broadband lines to stay connected and participate in the rest of our society. But talking about the new approaches, well, that's the easy battle. We have to make the work on the ground also in the regions that you all represent. And as you say in your report, trust in each other and the open debate, well, that is the cornerstone of our very union. And of course, this includes also the trust and the debates between our two institutions. And on that note, of course, I look forward to our exchange of views. Thank you.